Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock. This is Tuesday, October 15th. This is the regular meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board and I'm calling this meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute, and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. So let's do a roll call. Jeff Randall, Commissioner District 1 and President of the Board.
Dan
Kenneth
Tupper.
Collins, Commissioner District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
All right, we're all here. Agenda review. Did we have any changes to the agenda? And I saw that there was a late sending out of the capacity charge memo. Were you intending to talk about that a little bit, Kevin? Or
we are going to talk about the capacity charge, but that is in the agenda on.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Yep, I missed that. Okay, so no changes to agenda.
I'll
Okay.
make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have an approved agenda. Public comment. The public comment period allows members of the public to comment, limited to 3 minutes each, on any items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to making a public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president and are not permitted to disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. Do we have any folks who want to make comments on things not on the agenda or on consent? Rod's saying no. Anybody else online? Going once, going twice. All right, we're moving on. Manager and staff reports. Kevin.
So I'm going to start out kind of lighthearted here. In front of my computer, I have a popsicle stick house, and I've had a couple of people ask me about it. This was given to me and a couple other people from a lineman, top-notch lineman we have in our department. He does these projects with his kids. They had a few. So he brings them to work occasionally, handing them out. I'm pointing this out because our PUD, we do want to be a family-oriented PUD. We want people to feel comfortable bringing family things into workplace. And so I'm just doing a shout out to the kids who made this and the lineman. I won't use his name, but you know, we talk a lot about wanting to be a good place to work, and things like this make this a good place to work. So thank you.
When your kids are making popsicle stick playhouses, they're pretty happy. They're not, throwing them at each other or whatever else.
Like a lot of popsicles got consumed.
And there's a healthy diet of popsicles in this house, or fudgesicles or orangecicles or whatever. So yeah, all is good.
Next thing on my list is every so often we bring in Energy Northwest to do some security checks for us. They not only do security check on the cybersecurity, but they spend a lot of time on physical security and other things the PUD does. This year, Jeff Dodd, our safety person, was in charge of working with Energy Northwest. They're here now. They're doing a lot of their work this week here. Shortly after that, we will bring a report to the commissioners, and the good, the bad. I will say I got dinged last night when they went in my office and looked for things. So lessons learned. We've gone through this before with the commissioners. We just really appreciate Energy Northwest and the time they spend to help us become a better, more secure and safe PUD. Next, I'm going to have Will talk about undergrounding Marrowstone Island. We have talked about this in the past, that I believe this is one place that where we're undergrounding for fiber, we should really look at undergrounding the power. We have looked at our outages, a lot of reasons this makes sense, but I'm gonna have Will talk a little bit. He has some dollars. We've been working towards this and then possibly how to work through the financing.
Really quick before you start the presentation, a quick question for you. When you talk about undergrounding, a lot of the fiber, we're using the vibratory tooth type of deployment. Are you talking about actually trenching for this fiber, or is there a difference between the electric that we've been doing other places and what you would do here?
So depending on where and what type of power, if you go along Flagler Road, it's three-phase power. So that may require open trenching, but if you get on an East Maristone, we could plow in the conduit. So it'd probably be a combination, but a lot of this still has to be worked out. We're coming to the board to say, hey, this is our recommendation, best path forward. So a lot still has to be worked through.
Okay, well,
Yeah, so the state Department of Commerce has grant funding for small utilities to do resiliency and energy efficiency project, or not energy efficiency, increased reliability projects. Sorry, wrong grant hat.
it's all right. We're moving fast.
Yeah,
so.
just going quickly. So we are just under that cap of 4 million megawatt hours a year. So we qualify for the funding. Awards are up to $3 million. Requires a 1/3 cash match. We had staff put together a review or a table of projects. We looked through them. And at this time, the best matching project was undergrounding power on Maristone Island. The feeder going out there is our most problematic feeder in our system. And this couples nicely with our existing project for building fiber on the island. We had already designed a joint use trench along Flagler. We've spoken with the state. We've gotten their initial blessing to go forward with that design. So this would couple with that project, and we would also be putting in some new kind of smart reclosers that would go along with that would allow, or relays that go along with the reclosers. So we'd be a little bit of a demonstration project and greatly increased reliability and match two projects together. Go ahead.
And I'll add a quick one for you. And just a clarification, is this we found a grant that we can apply for stage, or we've applied for it? And
So the application's due next week.
Okay.
It's that's how it seems to work. We're putting together the application right now. So tomorrow we just got the initial cost proposal, which is about $2.87 million to do the project, which falls underneath the $3 million
Right.
needed. So we're going to move forward with that. And it's
Okay.
a 2-stage grant. So we'll apply for the first stage. And then if we make the second round, that'll be where we'll give more information. And
Okay.
see.
So
Dan.
because of the prioritization we're talking about in capital improvement projects and, that sort of thing, and the funding on this, so what kind of a mesh up timeline, if we have to start committing, contracts and materials towards this project, will we know that before we get the grant, or will we have to do so much work before we can qualify or get the grant? I mean, how's that timeline all work so that we don't end up getting too far down a path that we say, wait, it's got to stop the horses here because we have other projects that really do need to take a different priority.
so this is a question: how does this fit?
Yeah.
Within everything?
Yeah.
else we have
Yeah,
to
I
do?
mean, what are the off ramps, I guess, is maybe the biggest question.
Sure. So the first one, and Kevin, if you want to jump in, but so this is just the first round. We won't find out if we made the second round till after the new year. So it's unlikely any work on this project would be done in 2025. It would be after 2026, most likely. The other part of it is that we're doing part of the work regardless with the Jefferson North fiber project, because we are going to put in the electric conduit at that time, or at least we're exploring that. So that's how they would couple up nicely. So that'll be sometime late 2025, most likely.
So it sounds like everything we know now, it looks like a good fit, and we'll learn more.
It's a
as
very
we-
good fit.
as we
Yeah.
move
And so
ahead.
that's what we looked at. Yeah.
Okay, and it's
And it's like, it's 2/3 grant money.
and we're throwing our hat in the ring, have no idea if we're going to get it. Okay.
We've been very lucky with these grants, so we're going to go
Okay,
with the best
knock
of
on wood.
intentions. Yeah.
Ken,
Yes, thank you. Any idea how much we would save if we undergrounded the power lines on Flagler Road?
Save on,
Save on sending crews out to repair the lines when we have the wind blow a little bit.
Ken, great question. I can't answer it, but we'll pull outage records for the last several years, put an average per year. We can come up with a dollar amount.
Great, because I think that makes an even more compelling argument for going forward with this.
Not only the dollar amount, Ken, if we free up a crew from not having to go to Marrowstone, we respond quicker to other outage areas. So there's a lot of huge benefits to the whole PUD for this project.
and this would also help us split the load with Oak Bay Road as well.
okay. And it sounds like you're not asking for any action today. You're just
Doesn't-
giving us a heads up.
Yep, we're moving this. I assume the second round will require a board approval, but right now
Okay.
we're just putting the exploratory application.
Does the board have any more questions on this one? Sounds like it's,
Well, I think it's a great idea for a variety of reasons. So,
well, everything, we're going to be talking about the wildfire plan later. And I just think everything we can do to get stuff underground, I think it's eliminating a potential point of ignition and it's saving us from damage in case a fire occurs. So I think it's great. More resilient. Sounds good. Okay, keep going.
Okay. We're sure where we are.
I like the silent communication.
So, last thing on my list is my schedule. Next week, I will be at, the Waputa Managers Meeting and Energy Northwest meetings in, Tri-Cities. We will have a couple other PUD people there for the Waputa side, and they'll stay for the Energy Northwest stuff that, is gonna happen next week. The following week, we're doing a factory acceptance test for the Virginia transformer that we purchased about a year ago. They're getting ready once on Monday, the 28th. Will and I will be in Pocatello, Idaho. That's where they're manufacturing it. We will spend 2 days there witnessing tests, go through the factory tour. There's kind of production they put you through. And then Wednesday and Thursday, Will and I will be in Salt Lake. We fly into Salt Lake, out of Salt Lake, meeting with ICP engineers, looking at a variety of projects. As you know, I go there every couple months. This time will attend with me. We will review projects such as the transformer swap over. We have to work on the transmission, undergrounding. There's probably 12 projects that we'll review over there for the 2 days.
Okay. And when you're in Pocatello, if they let you take pictures inside the manufacturing facility, and they might not, but if they let you take pictures, please take pictures and come do some show and tell, because I'm sure others wonder too where these things come from and what's involved in making them. Dan.
So before
ahead.
we go
Yeah.
on, I went to high school in Idaho Falls, so Pocatello is just right next door. It's the old Bucyrus Erie. I don't know if you guys know the manufacturer, huge manufacturing of big machinery, earth moving equipment.
Cranes, yeah.
It's their old facility that they build the transformers in now.
Nice.
So was it
Cool.
an ironworks then at some point as well as part of that, or was it manufacturing and, putting stuff together? I mean, and just a little bit more history, just curious.
Yeah, it was Bucyrus Erie's manufacturing. They put the biggest crane
Right.
together in the world. All that kind of stuff was manufactured there and then shipped out to other places.
So quick question for you. On the 29th, we have a PIF board meeting, and I haven't seen the agenda for that. I'm assuming we might be looking at scoring or projects or whatever. I don't know what the timeline was. Do you have any information for me before that meeting? If you're not going to be able to be Zoom on that, I would appreciate anything you have for me that as far as coordination with the port or, the city, the county, that sort of thing. So
So Dan, as you know, we put in a joint project with the port for PIF funding. The project is to where the port wants to put a new mini industrial park into the runway. We would use some of our existing infrastructure and build new infrastructure to get three-phase power to their facilities. It's almost straight across from us right now, where the runway ends, kind of where our well field is. So we've put in for a grant with them, or PIF funding, I should say, for them to take the high voltage to the park from our new Irondale substation. So we're hoping that we're the only project that gets funded.
So anyhow, my question was, I don't know if you'll be able to make that via Zoom because I have it as 1 to 3. I don't know if that's accurate or not, or maybe the date could even change. So just trying to coordinate with you, so that I'm up to speed with the port in particular on that particular project, depending what discussions transpire. that
Yeah, if
day.
any questions come up that you can't handle,
Yeah.
do you have support?
And if I'm not sure I can be there, because most of the time, like when I'm at the engineers, I can get an office of theirs and I've taken meetings while I'm there. At the factory, I probably can't, so I'll put something
Yeah,
together.
I just want to get on your radar.
Have somebody there to support you. How this is going about is the port is the applying for the funds. We are part of their project. So it's our funding is through them.
And the goal of this money in these projects is economic development, and that's what the port is tasked with, more than we are. So
Yeah.
again, it sounds like a good fit, like a good priority for create jobs and.
And the timeline is for next year at this point to do the project, right?
Uh,
That's what I heard from Aaron. At least that's what I thought I heard.
We feel it's probably a late summer project for us, the earliest we
Mhm.
could work in, because we have to do some things on this side, a little bit of engineering that has to be done. so.
Okay.
and again, the county commissioners sign off on recommendations. The PIF board may decide there's other projects that are more worthy. So
Hopefully
Yeah.
not with all the time we've got on this one.
make sure it's on Kevin's radar. So.
Can I add 2 things to the calendar?
Sure.
So just wanted to remind the board that we have the BPA roundtable that Jefferson County is the host of that tomorrow and Thursday. It'll be at the Cotton Building downtown in Port Townsend. There'll be about 15 utilities talking about efficiency, energy efficiency. It's their energy efficiency roundtable. I'm sorry, putting back that hat on.
And what was the time on that again?
It starts tomorrow at noon and it's tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, 12:30. Yep.
And
then
it's
it
at the
goes
Cotton Building.
at the Cotton Building, goes to 5, and there'll be a little get together at 5 PM, I think at the old Whiskey Mill. And then there'll be it starts again the next morning, 8:30 to noon.
And what's the purpose of it again?
So the BPA holds these periodic efficiency roundtables for energy efficiency managers to learn about programs and share information. This is kind of their Western Washington group. So we've never hosted it before. So it's a nice occasion for us to be.
Okay.
Well,
And it's
okay.
basically 12:30 to 5.
Yep, and I'll send out another round of the agendas as well.
Okay.
And then on October 29th and 30th, the North Olympic Energy and Climate Resilience Summit that the NODC is hosting will be at the Seven Cedars Hotel.
And sorry, could you say that date again?
30, like I said, and I
Yeah.
actually have the PIF board on the 29th. and
I'm on the
close to
road.
things.
I already let him know I was gonna miss that one. And I have something in the morning tomorrow, but I'll probably try and stop by the Cotton Building
That would be great.
tomorrow at
Yeah.
some point. Probably not for the whole thing.
Yep.
But
So I'll send out more information, but I just wanted to remind the board.
thank
so
you
they're
for
happy.
bringing that up again.
Yep.
All right. Anything else for managers and staff? Okay.
I actually have one question for the GM. And a couple of meetings ago, when when Finley presented, there's some discussion about work we may or may not be working at towards going to Clallam County. I mean, an update, any background? I think I asked them to find out more about what that was and what the process or timelines were. What exactly is that and where are we with that?
This was the broadband of us possibly providing service in Clallam, the
Yes,
idea.
And, this had kind of morphed from, we were gonna look at doing some things right along the county line as of about 2 weeks ago, I instructed Finley Engineering not to work in Clallam County anymore. we really need to concentrate on Jefferson County, on getting our stuff up and running. So we've shifted gears a little bit there, not a little bit there, a lot there. They are not working in Clallam County, nor will they till staff can come back to the board and make a strong recommendation that we do that. At this point, it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do.
And was this a bead thing that it was like
Yeah.
part of the area fell, like straddled a line or something and was part of our area and part of their area?
Really what we were looking at, because our area with where we are now, a lot of it's being fed by the grant we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
But Bede could fit in there, and then definitely everything in Clallam County could have been Bede funding.
Okay.
So it made sense for us to look at it, but once we looked at it, it just doesn't make sense today.
Yeah.
We need to get our house in order first.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thanks for the update.
All right. Ken?
Yeah, Will, when did you send out an email regarding the BPA meeting?
I believe I sent it a month ago, but I'll double check and resend.
You're gonna resend it.
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't send it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I'll try to throw a third arm. I'll get it.
Okay. Are we all done then with managers and staff? Looks like we are. So I think we're on commissioners' reports, are we not?
Yeah.
So Ken, would you be willing to go first?
Yes. So October 10th, I attended the ICG meeting remotely. Was an interesting meeting. Liked the presentations. And it was particularly interesting to hear the before and after comments by one of the attendees who at first was a little bit put off that so much of the meeting was focused on energy, and then at the end of the meeting remarked as to how informative and useful it was. So met with the general manager on the 11th. On the 16th, I'll attend a meeting with the general manager at Cape George to talk about water issues there. On the 17th, I'll meet with the general manager and Dick Roderick, who is the administrator for PERMS, to talk about cybersecurity issues. On the 18th, I'll again meet with the general manager and plan on attending the Board of Commissioners special meeting. I'll meet with the general manager again on the 25th, and on the 29th, again attend special meeting of the Board of Commissioners, and November 1st, meet yet again with the general manager. And that's my report.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, so thanks. I attended the NOAANET meeting in Olympia on October 9th. They've got 91 days of cash on hand. That's a new all-time high. Each month they keep beating the previous record. There was a budget presentation for 2025. They also gave a report on a federal contract award that NOAANET got, along with, I think, 12 other entities on supplying governmental entities with services. I got more to report, but I think since we have NOAANET on the agenda later on, I'll give more in-depth report about the meeting at that point.
And I think the one thing you mentioned, though, that contract, that was a shocking contract. It was almost $1 billion that they're basically
That everybody's
saying
going to split
that-
up the way I understood. I don't think NOAANET got the
Oh,
bill. I think that
okay.
was going to be divided. Again, you might be right.
I don't know. We didn't
yeah.
dig into it.
Yeah. So, but it
Big contract.
it was exciting news
Mhm.
for NOAANET, because, like you said, I don't think they kind of thought that they were going to have a shot at anything, and they ended up getting a
Right.
piece of the pie. So
Yeah.
good news for NOAANET.
Basically using their network for highly secure government conversations. So
Yep.
interesting.
Let's see what else. I attended the ICG meeting as well on October 10th. I enjoyed both presenters, Frank Tuffner from Pacific Northwest National Laboratories and Rick Dunn, who is the general manager for Benton PUD. They both offered great facts and information regarding microgrids, distributed and intermittent energy generation, hydropower and transmission. I mean, a myriad of things. I was a little bit surprised that some of our elected officials didn't see the relevance of this information to our area. And Ken alluded to it a little bit, that there was, I think, a few minds probably changed about that. That the ICG maybe wasn't a forum for that kind of information or presentation. The Port of Port Townsend had organized that, and I, for one, supported them doing that. We've had other presentations at the ICG, and I thought Port Director Aaron Berg made a very eloquent statement about the purpose and diversity, of all the presentations that the ICG have scheduled since its the inception. So I thought he did a really good job of explaining, how and why these presentations happened with the ICGE. I met with GM Street on Friday, October 11th. I received an email from a water customer in Coyle on the 12th. I responded to that. I think all the commissioners were copied. I responded to that and forwarded it to the GM. I will attend the Waputa Budget Committee meeting in Olympia on October 17th. I will attend our special BOC meeting on October 18th. I will meet with General Manager Street on October 25th. And I will attend the Public Infrastructure Fund meeting on October 29th. And that, I think, concludes my report.
Okay. My report is I was at that NOAANET meeting also on the 9th, and we're going to talk about that, I think, a little bit next. And I don't know if you brought this up, Dan, but I thought it was interesting. The next meeting will be NOAANET seeking approval of their budget. So at their next meeting.
That's November 11th, I believe, 13th or 11th. I don't have it on top of my head. The workshop is on the 20th. I think the next meeting is the 13th.
Is the
Yeah.
board meeting.
Yes.
Typically, I think we're scheduled to do the.
I'm gonna put that on there.
Member presentation,
Presentation, whatever they call it.
owner
Okay.
presentation. Yeah.
Jeff,
And I'm gonna help Will.
I'm here to help. Okay. I was at the ICG meeting too, and it was an interesting meeting. I think it was interesting to hear the different perspectives of folks after that, because we don't talk about energy very much at those meetings. The Frank Tuffner with Pacific Northwest National Labs comment that they can do all these things with local governments and utilities, but they can't do them if there's a consultant out there that could provide the services instead. So the thing that I was wondering about with this idea of the battery storage we're looking at, and maybe looking at some microgrid stuff with the hospital or other things, it made me wonder, is there a role for them to play with us or not? I don't know if we already have sources of folks to help us with that.
Well, it was brought up, why was it the port that was sponsoring this type of a discussion and not the PD? Maybe that's something that we should consider, is taking that topic on and scheduling a presentation by the PD along those lines.
Yeah.
Since we do have a project, at least one or two projects, potentially they're going to require the battery storage. So that might
Yeah.
be a good way for us to,
And that's what I was going to say next is I think
sorry.
a little, no, that's fine. A little more meaty for our local folks, and an opportunity for us to talk about is, okay, what is the PUD doing about energy and resiliency here on the peninsula? And it might be worth waiting a little while, because we've got the budget, we're figuring out what projects are we proceeding with, and maybe getting a little further down the road. But I think it would really benefit those folks to hear what we're doing in our own neck of the woods on resiliency and energy, and maybe water too. I'm not sure. Water kind of is Pandora's box, but
I agree with you that it might be worth waiting a little while.
yeah.
Yeah, we still have to prioritize some projects and see what funding is available. We may not be to pull off some of the things we hope that we can.
Yeah, I think seeing what's real and what's going to happen first would be helpful. Yesterday I ran into Amanda Christofferson, who is a grant writer with Jefferson County, and she reminded me that she had forwarded me an email about a grant opportunity with, I think it was the Department of Energy, that she had sent Kevin and I. So I looked it up afterwards and saw that it was something that I think in December they're going to be asking for requests for proposals. And it came to mind because Kevin had mentioned several times, we have this long list of capital projects on electrical, and boy, we should get with it on looking for outside help, because if we have to fund all this ourselves, it's going to be very difficult. So I followed up with her, and I had another email from Perry Spring who said, "Hey, and the Department of Commerce has some grant applications coming up soon too." And I forwarded that one to you, Kevin. So I circled around to Amanda, and I just asked her, thinking about how we're sharing with the port their custodian. We've got this shared agreement to share staff. I just asked her, "Hey, by chance, I don't know at our level who we're assigning to go after these things at the PUD level, but I just asked if she had any capacity to help with looking for money for these kinds of projects. As she brought it up to me, she was interested, and she responded, "Yes, I do." So I just want to share that with you, Kevin, that, you know, in talking to Mark or looking at who we have to go after things, the county has someone who apparently has some expertise on this that might be useful for us.
Attached with DCD or to the
She's, I think,
county
at
exact-
she's at a public, she's just called the Jefferson County Grants Administrator. I don't think she's at a DCD.
Because we've dealt with her on some water issues we were looking at one point. She was.
She may work, she may report to Mark, she might report to Public Works. It just says Grants Administration, so she may be reporting directly to Mark. So anyway,
Monty.
there's that.
If
or
she's in
Monty, who
Public
knows?
Works, it might be Monty.
And then, so tomorrow, do we have a call? Okay, so we'll be talking tomorrow. Climate Action Committee meets on the 22nd. I'll be on the road to Energy Northwest on the 23rd and 24th. Our special board meeting on the 29th, I'm planning to go to a wedding in Spokane, so I'm planning to do the 29th and then the meeting on the 5th, probably remote. So I'll probably be calling in via Zoom for those.
So the meeting on the 29th will probably be moved. Annette will try to reschedule that one. Again, we'll be doing the factory acceptance tests on the transformer,
Mm,
and we don't get to say when that happened. They gave us 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Your transformer will go through their testing laboratories on those 2 days.
And-
So
And the 29th, was that for executive session? Was that what we were going to have? What were we going to cover on that?
So on the to be determined, we were gonna, depending on if we can get the budget approved prior, then it would be part of budget hearing.
Okay.
It would also be a continuation of the discussions we're gonna have on Friday about setting priorities.
Okay.
Because one of our priorities is funding. We've
Right.
all been talking about it all
Yep.
day today on how do we fund
Where are
this
we going to get the
project.
money?
So.
So one other quick thing on that, on the 29th, that PIF meeting is at 9 AM, assuming it is, the information I have is correct, it goes off. So if we try to, so if we try to move that meeting that day, just keep in mind that I have the PIF board meeting and I don't know if it'll be 2 hours or 3 hours.
It would be canceled
Oh,
for that
canceled.
day and moved to a new day and time.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
All right. That's my report. So next item on the agenda is
Consent.
consent. And let me check my email. I sent an email to Mike Bailey on one of the consent items. And I haven't heard back from him. So I don't have any issues with the consent agenda. Anybody else? Otherwise, you want to?
I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second on consent agenda. All in favor of the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have approved the consent agenda. Old business, capacity charge resolution, which, do we actually have a resolution?
Don't have a
In here.
resolution and we have a discussion.
Okay, and you forwarded an email to us with
Mhm.
with the agenda bill from last time.
And so there, as with all good things, this one also changed, beginning of last week.
Mm,
Originally, we were gonna try to push through a electric and water capacity fee.
mhm.
And that is what was presented. And there was some few questions I was supposed to get back to you guys on
Mhm.
small business.
I'm glad you remember that, because that was my list. It's like, okay, we had some things we asked for. Okay.
So, now the discussion part, and this came up 2 weeks ago. For example, when we built the water LUD for the Shine, they did not pay for any system upgrades, so what we were gonna do in the Shine area, for example, you would have to pay the LUD fee and the new capacity fee.
For people who are new,
New.
is there even gonna be any new connections? I mean, that may not be the best example, because I thought that one we just said was pretty.
Baristone Island.
Okay,
Well,
pick a
let's
different
go
one.
Baristone. So the new House there in Baristone Island has a set fee they have to pay
To connect
to connect.
as part of the LUD.
Part of that area's funding.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to do now and how we had things, they would pay the LUD fee plus the capacity fee.
Right.
Now we have to go back and research some of those old LUDs to make sure in the LUD fee, they didn't bring everything back to, for example, the well at Kennedy for part of the LUD fee.
Mm,
So, and we've discussed this before, our water records are a struggle to find and go through. So we're gonna have to do some research on the older LUDs. We don't think in the past, the LUD funded clear back to the
Right.
water tank.
but it might be, it very well could be a basis for a reduced capacity charge, because you're already paying for, like, the infrastructure has been taken care of for you for a while, but maybe this part hasn't.
So we have to relook at that.
Yeah, okay.
And that's why we're gonna say, okay, give us, till, a month or so to go through our water records to look at the LUDs and what they actually funded.
Okay.
We would like to move forward on the electric side of things. I have just very recently sent Nick, can't think of Nick's last name, with the, he works for Cindy at the EDC, to help us to make sure we're not eliminating any small businesses. Will, if you'll bring up the letter. So,
And Nick, and sorry to interrupt, but Nick is the guy who's like the super experienced guy who's came to us from Wazoo or something else. It seems like, is he he's the older guy?
no, the younger guy.
No, younger.
Okay, I'm not,
He was at the meeting, the one we just had.
anyway, no worries. Go ahead.
And so he's looking at our rates to make sure anything that's what we consider small commercial, single phase, they pay the same as the residential rate. So
Okay.
we feel that's fair
Right.
for the small business.
Right.
Where it came into effect is the larger businesses, because it does, if, for example, if you're 600 amps, you're gonna pay about $9,000.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when you build a new building.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's an existing building, you're moving in, there wouldn't be this charge. So, he has not weighed in yet. We visited on Thursday night at the meeting, and I'm sending him some information, waiting for him to come back. This year, on the three-phase services, what we're talking about, one customer would pay 9,000, and that's the only commercial so far this year. So
But then you've got one for 1,200 amps down there under three phase that
The-
says 42,000.
the 1,200 amps is, I don't see
Under
where
277.
for this year, we only have the one.
It shows up as a one there. Here.
Yeah, that's past years.
Oh,
The furthest column on the right is so far this year.
Oh,
through
sorry.
June.
sorry.
So even if it does affect some businesses, which I will get this information from the EDC, we're looking at 2 or 3 businesses. The other question, and I've done some research, I'll have to have Joel weigh in. There are things we can do with governmental agreements.
You might have a school, or you have a hospital, or a fire station,
There are
or
things we can do there, but Joel's gonna have to weigh in and say that, yes, through these other agreements, we could waive.
we asked, do they have to all be treated the same? An amp is an amp, or can they be?
From what little research I've done, there has been some exceptions, but it has to be through agreements with other governmental agencies.
Okay,
Um, with I think, we have to, charge them, but others have not. And I think you can. Joel, do you want to weigh in? There, I can. Where it becomes a little more difficult for me is if we're working closely with the county, for example, and they're putting in a huge building and we're working on a joint project, which we've done a lot with the county, the city, and the port. I think in those instances, we can contribute. It's a little bit harder if it's not a joint project, but most of the
Or
bigger,
government-oriented organization.
yeah, most of the projects we do, for example, the undergrounding at the port, that's a joint project.
Right.
We do a lot of work on the port for their buildings. Example, even to put this power into theirs, we're applying for a PIF grant together. So there is, for most of them, I don't think there's any problem us waiving some of those fees. Once you get outside of that, then it's gonna be Joel's,
Okay.
because I don't know the right answer.
Well, I think it's a good question because some of these
Definitely.
could be bigger services. And for me, it's some of these questions like, and we've seen with all new construction, it's like it doesn't come in with what you originally thought the budget was going to be. It always comes in higher because all these material costs are going up. And they're going to have to pay for the extension of power. Plus, we'd be throwing this capacity charge. And my concern would be something like, let's say it's the Emergency Operations Center. They finally get the money to build it. You know, you'd hate to do something that would be such a significant thing. It could potentially kill the project. And back to the commercial side of things, one of the questions I had too was not just about um, the money, but when businesses start, a lot of times they don't get revenue right away. They got all this cost they got to put out, and then they're hoping, you know, that the business flows. And so could they pay it, you know, over time, you know, especially if it's a significant amount of money. So,
And we have set up other programs where they can pay overtime.
Mhm.
So the overtime, I think is very doable, but it would have to be something set by the board.
right. Okay. And again, as we talk about why we're doing this, it comes back to, again, this need. And I think we have to really clearly articulate why our system needs to be improved to handle the additional growth that's going to be happening over the years.
Yeah, I again want to make sure that we're not subsidizing unnecessarily. Now, governmental agencies, fire, police, schools. I mean, those things are public services that everybody, can get on board with. If it's a private business or those types of things, or developer oriented type of projects, I think that's really what we're talking about here at the end of the day. And it's an apples and oranges comparison, but I kind of look at this as what the data centers are doing to utilities. They're coming in and they're affecting the ability of that infrastructure to handle a new customer, and who should pay for that. And it should be, the off taker of that energy. Whoever's coming in should have to offset that in some way, shape, or form. I know it's not a good comparison because they set different rates and there are different things that the other utilities do for those type of entities. We're a way smaller scale, but I look at it as being the same type of principle. If those type of projects are coming into our area, I think it's reasonable for them to figure it into their equation on the ability of it, I mean, I can't believe we're going to make it to where it wouldn't be profitable. I think they've got other issues they need to look at. Cash flow, as you recommend, as you talked about, is an issue they have to look at. Startup funds, capital, that sort of thing, investment. So on the commercial and industrial maybe side of things more than on obviously a large residential build. But I think where we're looking at right now, we're on the cusp of having to determine with our BPA contract for 2028 tier 2 power, and that's not going to be cheap. That's going to be more expensive. And if these things push us into that, that's where we have to kind of, I think, look at this fee as not as a deterrent, but as a way to tell people you're really affecting the rates of everybody else when you come on board.
Well, from staff point of view, though, this strictly is to rebuild infrastructure that the new demand is going to put on our system. And there are a lot of ways for us to mitigate those costs, time of use. There's a lot of things we can do, but ultimately we're going to pay out some dollars for increased infrastructure based on the new construction. So really, this is try to recoup the costs for the new customers that cause the cost at the substation side. So like I say, Joel's going to have to weigh in on the interlocals if that covers us for these governmental side of things. I think it does. At least the projects we've worked with them in the past, it would have.
Yeah.
And
Can
hopefully
I ask you something, Kevin, while I have you here on that? I mean, are you saying that because we've entered into interlocal agreements with the county, for instance, that somehow that mitigates the overall capacity charge, or that we're able to provide, some waiver of some of those? I'm just not, it's not clear to me
so
what that does, what an interlocal agreement does in regard to a capacity charge.
So, for example, when we did Water Street, there was joint trenching. There was a lot of cooperation. We brought something to the board that said, okay, we're going to do this project. The fees the PUD is going to pay are this much. The county's going to pay, or the city's going to pay this much. And
It's like in kind almost.
yeah, that project, joint project, and both entities, we got a good deal. They got a good deal.
Okay,
Those
I get it.
things that we can do to reduce, or even in some cases eliminate these costs.
I'm going to give a concrete example, and there's actually two. One is the hospital. How would it apply to them? And one is, let's say, Chimicum School. Let's say Chimicum School that's got some old buildings. It's got existing services. And let's say they pass a bond down the road at some point to demo some buildings and put up a new building. And it's probably going to, maybe take a higher level of service. Would we, in those cases, take like, okay, the existing service is X amps, the new service is Y amps, and your capacity charge is going to be based on the additional amps? You get credit for how much you were using in the past?
New amps connected. And there are some capacity fees that say, okay, if you're an existing customer, you don't have to pay the capacity fee. In our case, I think we need to, and if I'm saying something wrong, Joel, stop me, but we have other, for example, businesses that aren't the hospital that we wouldn't do the same thing for. We would say, no, you're a business, you're gonna have to pay for, if you put a whole new grow operation next door, you're gonna have to pay for the new wing or whatever. The hospital, and I am not working on the hospital job this time, but on the last hospital job, we worked very closely with them. We put in a lot of new infrastructure. We put a lot of stuff in. So to me, that's where the interlocal would come in. We had agreed to how all of these things, the new construction, that we had to take some poles out. They gave us some easements for some anchors. There was a lot of things that were give and take that we would take in consideration for
In-kind contributions that might
Yeah.
offset some of a capacity
some
fee,
of the
for
fees.
example, if there's some
And
other.
there's with all of the projects that I could come up with that we've done with the hospital, I don't know last time if you relocated the poles. We did a lot of work. They had to give easements, so there was a lot of in-kind trade. They did the sidewalk project at the same time, so I think we can cover ourselves that way to offset the large cost for those entities.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I'm probably gonna ask, so what I'm hearing you say, Kevin, is on the water side, because of these LUDs, we need to do some more
Lot of
research
research.
and figure out how that could work. So we're gonna get some work done there and come back. On the electric side, you're interested in moving forward, and I guess I'm kind of turning to the commissioners, asking, okay, what other questions can we think of right now? But I think for the, you know, the other items we have on the agenda tonight, we probably need to keep moving, but
What our proposal is, we'll bring a resolution to the board
okay,
next meeting, and it would have in there the carve out for agreements with other agencies, governmental agencies. And we would go from there, because to me, that's the last little piece. I'll have some answers for the businesses, but it's such a small portion, private businesses,
Sure.
that I think we have to move forward with those. But Nick should get back to me. And then, but it's a carve out for electric only.
okay. Dan? looks
Yeah,
like you got-
I don't have any other input on this at this point, other than I'd like to see us keep moving with this aggressively to, it's not going to affect us budgetarily, I don't think, in any way, shape, or
gonna-
form for 2025. But I do think because of the cost of service and rate study, this could help on that particular part of things. And we didn't ask today where we're at in that process. I imagine Kevin will give us an update here soon again as to where we are with that. But that's my advice, is that we keep this moving as aggressively as we can, so that we can get that information kind of ironed out here at some point between now and the end of the year, hopefully, so that that rate study and cost of service study, this is information they'll have to put into that.
We would like a decision fairly soon from the board so that we could set like a 90-day timeframe.
Yeah,
Our goal would be in January to try to say, okay, from January 15th on, these fees would be enacted. That
Right.
gives the developers, all the people, time to know we're doing it. So our goal would try to be to get it done, let's say the end of November, and then go 90 days out, or, something like that. So when the board approves it, there will be a delay for the fee to come into.
okay. And in terms of timing, I guess the philosophy I have too is I like the idea of starting at a lower rate than the maximum, significantly lower, so that, no one wants to pay more. But when they see this, they're like, okay, we really make the case for why we need it. And for me, it's almost like our house is full. We have a full house and we have more people coming who want to move into their house. It's like, well, should the people in the house pay for the addition for the new people, or should the new people collectively over time help pay for adding onto the house so we have more room? However we explain it to folks, but then the people who are the first people to pay, they're going to like, well, this stinks. But hopefully they can see, well, if I waited till next year, it's going to cost even more. So might as well pay for it now and, get in early when it's going to be less than it will be later.
And I don't disagree with anything there in principle that you had to say. The other thing I would put into the hopper here is, we pay consultants to look at these things, and I think they do it, objectively. And if we start ignoring what they recommend, I'm like I said, I'm all for starting whatever threshold the board decides. But I do think that this is a path we need to proceed on, because we had consultants say, here's the information and here's the benefit. So.
Ken, do you have anything to add for staff? For next?
I can wait until our next meeting to tie a ribbon around this.
Okay. So, staff, you have anything more?
No.
Okay. Thank you for the update on the capacity charge. It sounds like you were thoughtfully thinking about, okay, if we really did implement this, what are some of the things that we'd have to address? And it's a good catch on the LUDs. Wildfire plan.
So on the wildfire plan, Scott Bancroft made some changes that one of the commissioners have sent. And then there was a question on like responsibilities and stuff like that, roles and responsibilities. So on roles and responsibilities, we're bringing it up right now. And this pretty much lays out everyone's job for this. The engineering supervisor and electrical superintendent are responsible for assisting me in actions taken during the SCADA. What they're talking about here is at some point, the PUD may or will have scheduled blackouts for red flag days. How do you do that? Who is authorized to turn the power off? Where do you turn the power off? And we are working with our electrical engineers. It's not only how you turn the power off, it's how you turn the power back. It can take longer to turn the power back on than you would think. It can take hours because you have to patrol line. You can't just assume everything's back to normal. You have to patrol lines. There are in between measures about the reclosure settings and tripping and how do you patrol there. So there's a lot that goes into that first sentence. We are having a lot of engineers look at it. We actually have modified our 4-year work plan to include some of the fire mitigation dollars in the work plan so that we can discuss them on a budgetary scale, not just in the fire mitigation. I am responsible to coordinating with JPUD, EOC. Part of those duties, though, will be performed by our safety manager. CSRs have a responsibility for notifying the customers in a wildfire emergency. There are a lot of information that goes out when these emergencies are scheduled to happen. That would be done by Will and Jameson. Their team would be responsible to reach out to the different, not only groups, but our customers.
So is this something we would tie in with Nixle perhaps, or
All of the above.
like an Amber Alert type of a thing? I mean, are we looking at, are those the type of things we're looking at with this as far as informing the public?
I don't know how Will and Jameson will accomplish some of these goals. We're going to try to reach everybody as quick as we can. Because at times, at least in my past, you have a little bit of a time before you have to do the shutdown and you notify as many people as possible. So they're, everything they can do, they will do.
Yeah.
And even during fires, a fire will change direction and then you'll shut off a different area, or, you know, the wind will change and in a preemptive shutdown, you may do different than what you originally planned. So a huge part of this is communication to the public.
So in terms of how the plan addresses this shut down because of weather conditions and so forth, the comments that you made that this is the very first plan and that we're going to be updating this plan. And this is something that utilities and fire folks in Washington state are looking at about, might there be times when we might want to shut it off? I'm comfortable that that's going to evolve. And I'm also comfortable that, hey, some weird thing could just happen where we just know it's safer. And even with all the impacts, it's to shut it off than to leave it on, even though the plan really leans the other way. It's like there's all sorts of negatives of shutting off power, so we really don't want to do it, you know. So, are there other things you wanted to go through? I just want to say that I can go through my edits really fast, and I think we can approve this thing today.
Go
So,
through your edits.
Okay.
I'm good.
okay. So if it's okay, with, Ken and Dan, on Friday, I read the whole plan. I found just a handful of small edits and then one question. And I think we can go through them. And then if you two have any other comments or
I read it for
questions.
substance and I'm good.
Okay. So the first one I have is on page 7 of the plan. And again, Scott tried to make all the edits and he sent out a revised version, and I can kind of cover those as we go. So the first one is the top of page 7. The first bullet point just says the CSR director. And I looked through it and I couldn't find anywhere where it said before that what the CSR director is. This is the first occurrence of it. So just on page 7,
CSR director, that's not my title.
then what should it say? I'll read the sentence.
Service director.
Yeah,
Should be the service director is responsible for notifications to be provided to customers during a wildfire emergency. That's what it should say.
Yep.
The services director. So that is one edit. So hopefully Cammie's catching this.
Will's changing.
Who's
it
writing
right
these-
now on the fly?
The services director. Okay, that's the first one. Second one, page 7 chart under general manager. This was my question because in the chart, it said services director, and Gene is saying that's the correct title. And I asked Scott that, and he changed it to customer service. So again, we're saying customer services director. Good. The next one is if Will, if you could go back to the index on the very first or second page of the document, it's before page 1. There's a section that's called 7.4.1.4. Actually, go to that, and it's on page 25. Let's go to this first, and then we'll go back and fix the index later. So on page 25, there's a section called detailed line inspections. It's section 7.4.1.4, and it looks like it's not part of the boilerplate fire plan that DNR put out. It's something we created, and there was no title to it. So he's added the title, detailed line inspections. And he changed, we had Ariel spelled like the Ariel in the Disney cartoon. We got the spelling right. And, but if you go to the index now, the index still doesn't have anything listed. So it says 7.4.1.4 in the index. So we're good. Everything's good there. So go back to the index. Now.
Just checking the format, see if that's the issue.
No,
You just need to add
had that 7.
it's 7.4.1.4, and there's nothing on the index. It doesn't have the title of the section, and he didn't have it in the body either. He fixed the body, but we just need to add it to the index. It's just a small thing. Right there, 7.4.1, right?
If you go up to the top, you should be able to just update that table.
Yeah. You went past it. Yeah, go down,
Contents, yeah, there you go, update.
go down.
7.4.
Right there. See that blank spot?
Mhm.
You see if I can do an auto update and see if it operates.
Or you can make a note and fix it later outside the meeting. You don't have to do it on the screen right now. Just whatever's faster. Point 1, point 4.
There you go. Okay. Got it.
Detailed
Thank
line
you.
inspections.
Okay, next one. Page 25. Okay. He fixed that one. It was just a typo. There was a couple of dots in a weird sentence. And then the last one, this is a question for Scott, and he's not here, so I'll ask Kevin. On page 21, section 2.2 talks about the capital improvement plan. Wait till you're there. 25. It's at 7.2.2. There we go. Bullet point number 2. Poles with operating devices to be cleared of flammable vegetation around them with a radius of 10 feet. Perform this for every wood pole with operating devices in the system for resiliency. And the question I asked Scott was, if we're going to, just how and I get the point. The point is keep the vegetation away from the pole. So if there's a fire, hopefully the pole doesn't catch on fire.
No, it's a little different here.
Oh, what is it?
So they're talking poles that have equipment on it that can cause a spark. The spark falls down.
Oh,
So this is what I think.
having fuel.
You don't have the fuel underneath it
Firewise issue.
if you keep everything mowed and clean.
Okay. I was thinking of it as a fire break issue of, okay, you're thinking of it as a source of ignition issue.
It is, usually when you talk about equipment on the pole, it's an ignition issue.
Okay.
A bird or a squirrel is up there and catches
Got
fire
it.
and drops straight down.
Or
Got
the
it.
Fuse on a transformer, their
Okay.
expulsion fuses.
So my thought was it was about, it was different. It was about, okay, is there material that we can put on the full? So since that's the issue, I'm done. And that's all my edits. So do either other commissioners have any changes?
No,
It's just like, it's our first go at this. We'll be touching this thing up on the go for a long time.
Yep.
Yearly, probably.
Do we have
Yearly.
any public comments on the wildfire mitigation plan? Rod saying no. Anybody online? Going once, going twice. Seeing none. So we don't have a resolution with this. Would it just be authorizing staff or basically adopting the plan and authorizing staff to forward it to, is it Department of Natural Resources?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a deadline of.
It's the end of the
31st.
month.
First.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move that we adopt the 2024 to 2027 wildfire mitigation plan and forward the plan to the Department of Natural Resources and any other state.
second,
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, and thank you, Scott, in absentia. Next. Da, 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 da.
No, Annette.
Our favorite topic.
So if I could start out, I'll pick up on finishing my report.
Can I start with a light note? So my light,
I
my,
think I'd rather get my report first.
this is super light.
Oh, okay.
My light, and it'll set you up. My light note is my first thought when I saw the popsicle stand house is it's the dog house that Kevin was going to be sent to after the NOAANET meeting that Dan and I had to go to.
Well,
Dan.
I take this serious though. I
Right.
mean, I know it's lighthearted,
Right.
but this is something we have to take serious. So,
Absolutely.
um,
Please
it-
continue.
So yeah, on Monday, the 7th of October, obviously, I sent an email to, I think I said that at the beginning of our last meeting, to NOAANET CEO, that I wanted to schedule an executive session for the NOAANET meeting that was occurring on the 9th to discuss the disputed bill that had gone to collections. My understanding from Craig was he responded that he would double check with their legal counsel and the board president on an executive session, and he did that. NOAANET legal counsel responded to me saying the following morning saying that there was not any executive board session planned for the 9th, but that I could address the issue during other items. And our counsel concurred with that on that course of action. So I addressed the NOAANET board and the member reps on the action taken by NOAANET to send the disputed 2022/2023 12-month, it was split between the 2 years, network monitoring services bill to collections. Again, we'd had our conversations that Monday. And I relayed our board's disappointment that this issue could not have been resolved through some form of arbitration or mediation effort. It was unfortunate the communications between the two of us had apparently broken down. I also relayed to the group that, our board wasn't prepared to pay a bill that we had been given direction from staff and legal counsel that we shouldn't pay without further, documentation or exact invoicing during the contested time of service. And we still had questions about some of the contractual clarification. I reiterated several times, as we have in the past, that JPUD would pay, all compensation due if, for delivery of service and contract agreements were substantiated. NOAANET should receive payment. This is, again, my opinion. I told them this, that they should receive payment if payment is due them. NOAANET responded that they felt that they had supplied sufficient documentation
to JPD before they sent it to collections. I asked the board to have Noanet withdraw the collections proceedings so that maybe we could take one more shot at coming to resolution on this. That was followed by some robust discussion, but there was no consensus or motion to stop the proceeding. I then suggested or asked if Noanet would make any and all documentation available to any of the board or the reps, who wanted to review it for further information, possibly that the two general counsels could review it for contractual accuracy if possible. And there was no decisions or, anything done toward that. It's just things I brought up. After the meeting was over, I asked Craig Nelson if he would forward me any and all information and documentation that Noanet possessed supporting their position and any timeline related communications of the events that had brought us to the point of collections. Craig agreed to that request and has forwarded that information, which I in turn have forwarded to our legal counsel for distribution and review within the utility. I assume that both commissioners have received that information. Whether my course of action to broach the collections issue at the Noanet meeting was, unwarranted, unappreciated, or unprofessional, I leave that to those involved to decide. And I really felt that our board wanted to be heard on this issue. I wholeheartedly support Noanet as a board member and as a board member of this utility, for their right to be treated fairly. But as a JPUD commissioner, I have an oath and obligation to our customers and customer owners to uphold as well. So, this is the most conflicted I've ever been in almost 6 years as a commissioner. What was the path forward here? I truly feel this could have been resolved really early on if both parties could have communicated better as partners. Legal action, again, I said this, legal actions, collections, or decisions to not communicate in a timely manner is really not in the best interest of Noanet, JPD, or the ownership group. What else? Moving forward, I think that we all need to remember, that everyone involved at Noanet, the owner utilities, we're all doing great things for our communities and for the people of Washington. So, again, that was kind of a little bit of my thoughts, but basically how I addressed the group, condensed version, obviously. But one other thought, coming out of this is the lack of communication or coordination within our own utility seems a little bit evident with this particular process with this, and we need to come to better conclusion moving forward with things that we're doing along these lines with Noanet in particular, but any joint agency that we work with, there's going to be complications because you have the elected, you have the general managers, you have staff who interwork and, cooperate with each other. And we all kind of have a little bit different rules at the end of the day. So that was one of the other things I brought forward at the meeting is what, as commissioners, we don't really get ourselves involved with the day-to-day operations, which is kind of what this was. But I feel like we kind of got, had to kind of come into this particular one. Not that I would want to make a habit out of that, but I also made that statement as well. So again, I hope we realized we got more work at home to do. I did have two quick questions for the board. One is, are you okay with the fact that I requested that information from Craig? Because again, that's kind of me getting out of our lane. I know that doesn't necessarily go over well on both sides of the ledger there. And moving forward, whether our board members should have a little more insight or communication into the day-to-day operations as it relates to Noanet. I'm not saying we should do this for every entity, but this one seems to be problematic for us in the past and at the present. So I don't want to get out of our lanes, but is there something you guys feel maybe we should start from a communication standpoint to have more insight into? That's my two questions. Are you okay with what I did? And what you see that maybe we need to do something different moving forward, as a board?
Sure. I'll just share my thoughts on it. So, anytime, it's a first for me too, being involved with a public agency where another public agency says they're taking you to collections. I'm not on the PDA board. It's that they're going through something far worse, but, it disturbed me. And I think the board's role is we represent the public. And in some ways, we're kind of a backstop if things haven't been resolved at a lower level. So I think you're requesting the information from Craig And then when I was at the same meeting you were at, Craig forwarded it to me too. And I didn't go through the whole thing till I got home. But seeing the information that they put together helped me see the issue in a light that was helpful. So I think asking for that was appropriate. And I think it's always good to share with, the manager if you're having communications with NOAANET personnel. That's what I try to do. On the second issue, I guess where I stand with getting additional clarification about how we're working with NOAANET, since we're also NOAANET owners, and I think the facts of this case support some, I don't want to say monitoring. I think that's not probably the right word, but I just think getting, what do they say? Trust but verify. Some checking in with staff of, the broadband division's new. It's aggressive. We're doing all these things. We're going 1,000,000 miles an hour. We got a lot of leg motion going. And I think that may have been part of this, that we're busy, we're going fast, and the agreements with NOAANET are super detailed. And some of those messages from NOAANET, us to NOAANET and them to us was, well, how many things are you monitoring? And are you monitoring this one? And will you stop monitoring that one? It's just a lot of detail work. And so the question I have is, who in the future is going to be the specialist who works with them and knows this stuff? Because I saw emails from Will and Lori Ray and Cody. And I didn't see emails from Kevin, but I'm betting there were probably phone calls from Kevin, so we had multiple people on our end talking to NOAANET about stuff. And for me, it's like, we didn't really seem to have a single point of contact. And that'll be one of my questions in the future is, how are we, and they're just one. I mean, NOAANET's one vendor. We got all these other vendors we're working with. So, I think it was appropriate for us to get involved. I'm really glad that the manager has concluded that we're going to pay the bill. But it was concerning. I'll stop there. And Ken, let's let Ken go, and then we can have some back and forth discussion. Go ahead, Ken.
So I don't have any problem, Dan, with your asking for the documentation from Craig. The impression that I get is that we decided to pay the bill because it would be more expensive to litigate it. Is that accurate?
I think we probably, their comments is, hey, we're monitoring the devices. And then again, staff can be specific about this. And I think there was some question about, are they monitoring devices that we no longer have in service? And when you look at the email.
Well, just a sec.
Go ahead.
So I would like an answer to that specific question as to whether our decision was premised on the fact that it'd simply be more, at the very least, more expensive and time consuming, and create additional ill feelings if we were to challenge this.
Kevin?
From my standpoint, I'll let Joel go next. Yes, Ken, all of those went into the decision. Is it, what's it going to cost us? What do we lose in good faith? These are neighboring PUDs that we deal with all the time. We have a good relationship with them. Does that affect this? So a lot went into the decision. And part of the discussion tonight is unless the board directs me not to, I believe we should pay this bill at this time for a variety of.
And I'm okay with that. And I feel like the commissioner's role is to look at things at least the 20,000 foot level, not the ground level. That's what the staff is supposed to do. And I feel I was adequately informed as this was building up. So I don't have any criticism of the communication from staff, at least to myself as an individual commissioner. I saw this coming, and I guess it was inevitable because of the difference of perception between Jefferson PUD and NOAANET. And we need not get into the history of those differences of perception. So that's all I have to say.
One quick comment before Joel goes. I mean, I know that when an email came out, I thought we'd get a little more background from the general manager, and maybe that's where Joel is headed here, on what our decisions were going to be moving forward. Wasn't sure exactly what decision was going to be made or how it needed to be made. And so that's why I asked about if everybody got any information. So just a little bit of background there. On where the discussion is headed here. So I wasn't exactly certain, other than an email, of what was going to transpire, because we hadn't gotten an update about the collections process, where that was. Because that was one other thing that, you know, I when we got into that discussion about the collections, is whether or not it could be withdrawn or paused or whatever. And we got some support from some fellow commissioners about, you know, that particular issue. So it was a pretty robust discussion. So just kind of curious.
I'd like to keep us moving, but I think once you give it to collections, it's like you've contracted it out. So you now can only get half
No,
back.
Not correct.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. By saying pay it, what that means. That's where I was headed, is by saying what does that mean? What's the process now that this was initiated? And I don't know if NOAANET has taken any steps to do anything or not. I haven't heard any responses from NOAANET, but I didn't really ask for any either. So
I contacted the collection agency. It's actually a legal firm, I think. I don't know. Yes, NOAANET can pull it back if they choose to. There is kind of like this grace period that it's not like what I would consider a real collections, where the minute it goes there, they get pennies on it. That's not kind of how it works. We're going to submit some the fees, and will be considered paid in full.
Okay. Well, I support us paying it. My questions are, going forward, what are we doing to make communications with NOAANET more clear? And what are we doing so that we understand the agreements we have with NOAANET? And when we have maybe a difference of opinion with NOAANET as to what the agreements are, who's paying who, what are we doing to resolve it so that it doesn't go to this level?
So what I think needs to happen is the contracts and stuff we have with NOAANET are very simple, and they pretty much say, hey, you're going to monitor X. It doesn't say we're going to monitor the Cisco 3662 at 310 Four Corners, and we're going to do this and that. I think as we move forward, we need to be very specific, very detailed, saying this is what we're requesting. We need NOAANET to know that for example, the only person that can enter into a contract would be my signature. So we don't care about emails. We don't, emails can get the process started. This is what we want. This is the quote, but it has to be signed off. So I think it's going to take a step back, where it's not just people talking and things happening. We are going to have written contract. It'll take more of Joel's time, but things will be spelled out, and that'll eliminate this whole discussion, because we're hanging our hat on the original document said 0 items monitored. So, we just have to be very detailed. We have to be very specific, and I believe that will facilitate better outcomes in the future.
So again, since we're in the weeds right now, on the billing side of things, should we have expected, because I didn't see it, maybe I missed it because I'm not forensically accounting wise, not sure what all I read and how to interpret some of it, but should we have gotten a monthly invoice during that contested period?
I just want us to stop
Oh.
because we're getting back into the back and forth of what they said and what we
But
said.
this is a contractual thing. This is what I'm asking. Is that the kind of thing that was in place, or is that something different we need to look at?
That's part of the facts that are in dispute, as I read it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Can
So-
can I comment on just a couple small things? The basis of my recommendation to pay the invoice was severalfold, and one included just the, absolute expense that we would have to go to defend ourselves. So cost of defense absolutely was part of it to recommend that we settle it. Two, I will say this, and I won't go into the details, but there was information that was provided after Commissioner Tupper and Commissioner Randall spoke up at that meeting that we didn't have before, that we kept asking for, that made me look at what our circumstances were a little bit differently. And it just, in light of the new information, it made sense to compromise the claim and just pay it. And third, of course, is just the cost and time and focus that takes management away from the task at hand, which is building a robust retail services broadband network. So that really is the basis of why I recommended that Kevin settle the amount.
Okay. Well, we have the budget and this important low income protection program resolution to talk about. So I'd kind of like to move us along if the commissioners are
So
okay.
one
with
last point, and that is that they're going to have a workshop on the 20th of November, and then the member reps and the board members are going to be at that. I don't know that they're going to allow anybody beyond that. So my question to the two of you is to get with Kevin, if you would, if there's any issues about the KnowInNet business model, business plan that they're talking about moving to, or any issues like this with services ownership and services and things like that, I think might be on the agenda as well. I can't speak to what exactly the agenda will have
Yeah.
or what are the appropriate topics. But if you guys have any thoughts about things that we should discuss, because like us, if there's other services that we haven't been able to get and we want, is that something that we need to talk about at KnowInNet as an owner? These are services that all owners should be, able to get or whatever. I mean, I just need to know a little bit more information going there as to what you gentlemen see as the topics about ownership at KnowInNet, and the things that they might talk about at that workshop. I realize I don't have a lot of detail for exactly what the topics.
Is
Could be.
staff going to be at that workshop?
I believe it's just going to be the member reps. KnowInNet staff probably will be, but I think it's just going to be the member reps and the board members.
Is it that you're not available?
Well, I asked the question when we were there, and if you recall, they said that the reps could be included. So,
Well, I mean, most of those people representing other PUDs are the broadband staff.
Yeah.
It's not that many board members. So I think we should have broadband staff at that meeting.
but Kevin, there again, Kevin is intimately involved and knowledgeable of that. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
So I guess the argument could be made that, well, Kevin is that person for us, where it might be
Whoever-
an actual staff.
I think
member
whoever
from the
Kevin
board.
says it is, whoever Kevin wants to be there in addition to you should be there.
Well, this is something that Kevin and I would need to, as a board member, ask Craig, what's the policy going to be for that meeting? I'm asking the two of you now, or giving you the opportunity, because we're about a month out from that meeting, to say, hey, here's some things we should be asking at this workshop. So.
Yeah, I think some boards choose to send a staff member. We like to have both because we kind of have a little different perspectives. I think you should just both go, and I wouldn't ask permission. I would just both go.
Oh, I like the both.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm fine with that, and I think we need to move on because
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say on this is what we're trying to do something really important for the citizens of Jefferson County. We're trying to stand up a broadband business, and we're trying to get fiber to as many people and businesses as possible. And broadband is different than electrical and water. There's other organizations competing for those customers. And we've seen it here with other entities, and it's going to continue to happen in the future. So when stuff comes up that's annoying or confusing or whatever, I think the thing we all need to remember is the reason we're doing this and the reason we're fighting this fight is to improve the lives of Jefferson PUD customers, because none of these other guys were going to do it. We're the only ones that can do this. And knowing it, and others, we're really the first ones to try this aggressive retail idea. And it's gonna, there's gonna be friction with other organizations. And I think just keep in mind, who are we working for? Why are we doing this? And that's all I'll say. Okay. Next item is the budget presentation. And we're short on time. Maybe staff could just say what you were hoping to accomplish tonight, and then the board could see what we've got.
The board had, the question of last meeting was the 18 people that we had in the budget.
Yes.
Who are they and what they are?
Yes.
Will is gonna bring up that Excel spreadsheet. So we provided this to the board, and
When-
now we're providing it to the public on the 18 people we're
Did-
estimating.
Did you
to-
email this to us? Because I missed this somehow. Okay.
The 18 people we're looking to hire. I am gonna bring up a couple things, because this is a projection. But for example, we're gonna hire a custodian. Right now, we pay the port for custodial services. So even though we have that dollars in our budget, it really will be offset by the dollars we save by not hiring a custodial person. The email came from Mike Bailey.
Okay.
about a
Yeah,
week
I
ago.
can't find it. All right. So I'm looking. Go ahead.
Additionally, we are looking at some flaggers. Right now, we pay a large sum of money for multiple contractors to do flagging for us. We would bring some flaggers in-house. Those in-house flaggers, we would still have to hire, some flaggers for our duties, but the cost that we would save by having our own flaggers is offset by the cost we pay. So even though we're showing them, they're in our budget, a lot of these people, their dollars will save or be saved through other measures. For example, IT support tech. That person, we're looking at sharing the cost with them with the port. So that person would work for us part-time. Well, they'd work for us full-time, but part of their time would be spent on port projects, and we could go in those directions. We're looking at a wastewater treatment plant operator 3 or above. 50% of that person's salary will be paid for by the county and the interlocal for us to run the sewer. So this is the list of people we're looking at. It may change a little bit, but this is the basis of the monies in the budget. So that was the last question the
Okay.
board had last week. We're hoping if there's any other questions, if not, are we ready to approve the budget? And if so, we have a resolution.
Right.
If not, we'll bring it back at the next regularly scheduled meeting. But staff needs direction. What additional information do you want to see?
Okay. Thank you for this. I missed it somehow. So thank you for bringing it. to
I'm
our
just
attention.
wondering if it makes sense to, again, hold off on finalizing the budget until, this was good to get this information. But, and again, I know that the budget, once it's set, the general manager has discretion to do things and change things. We all have discussed that, but just wonder if it makes sense that, I think you said we're going to have a prioritization meeting on projects here before this is actually comes due, that being the deadline for the budget. Maybe it makes sense to wait till we have that discussion on prioritization, so the budget might be a little more rigid at that point, rather than us down the road, having to make decisions. I'm talking about capital improvement type things for your work plan, those type of things.
We won't add any more capital projects to this budget. We can't. Staff.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm concerned that maybe we're gonna have to cut some things that are gonna be in the budget, so.
But that would be a budget savings. We feel we can accomplish all these goals, so the prioritization isn't to eliminate things out of this budget. It's to say, okay, moving forward, how do we and what projects do we do next? So I don't think the prioritization, and I don't mind waiting, Dan, but the prioritization isn't going to affect this budget. This budget is what staff thinks we can accomplish. It's very ambitious, but
Okay. So sounds like you have some questions about how does this fit into some of the additional
Well, I'm
steps
still
that
a
we
little
have
concerned
ahead.
about our cost of power, transmission cost, and when I look at the numbers in there, and then revenues. But I see Ken has his hand up.
Yeah,
so I'll
and
defer.
I guess my thoughts on it are the budget's a plan. I went through it again with really looking at all the details, and I just had one question for Mike, which was in the financial report in the consent agenda. It had some tier numbers, and the tier for this year were low. For the O tier, it was like 1.13 and 1.3 for this year so far. So I emailed Mike that question. We'll get that answer back, but and it's much lower than the tier estimates that are in the budget. So I don't have anything left to ask on budget, and I realize the budget's a plan, and I realize we have all these other things like capacity charges that we're trying to get done. And the sooner that we get the budget done, that can be check. It can go in the box. Those numbers can go in, and we can move on to other things. But Ken, what are your thoughts?
So recognizing that the budget is a roadmap and it is subject to modification based on additional information, I'm ready to check the box tonight. So I move that the Board of Commissioners approve the budget for calendar year 20, I think it says 2024. It should be 2025.
I just looked at that.
So with that modification, you want to make that modification, Ken?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the resolution for calendar year 2025. I'll go ahead and second it, and then we can have discussion.
No further discussion. I mean, if it's the board's pleasure to move forward, that's fine. I'm not gonna
Okay.
stand in the way.
I think the questions that you have, Dan, about how does this fit in and what capital projects can we do and when, they're all good questions, and we're gonna be talking about them. So, okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the 2025 budget resolution. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Good job. Made it through another budget process. Okay, I think it's the last item on the agenda is Gene can probably read it off faster than I can get to it.
Low income shut-off protection program resolution.
Indeed.
And I apologize. I sent Jameson the wrong agenda report. You don't have to approve this tonight. The
Okay.
recommendation is not to approve, but to discuss if you would like.
Okay, why don't you give us an overview?
So we applied for United Good Neighbor to join their Give Jefferson campaign, and we were accepted. We should see $10,000 in funding come in at the beginning of the year. I would like to stand up utility assistance grants to be managed by us in-house. For customer owners whose income is 80% area median income or 200% of poverty level. And I would like to do up to $500 per household for
Okay.
their past due.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. One is this something that you anticipate we're going to get in future years, or is this going to be a one and done thing, or do we not know?
I intend to apply every year.
Okay.
and I intend to look for additional funding to add to this program.
Okay. Then the second question I had was, you indicated in there it would fund about 20, if you do the math, 20 times 500 is 10,000. It could be as few as 20 incidences. Is the idea that folks would basically say, I have a hardship because I had a traffic accident, my car got knocked out, and whatever. Is it like I can pay my bills, but I had this thing happen and I'm now behind, or are we going to ask for that kind of information?
No, I don't want to know what their hardship is. Well, let me rephrase that. I do want to know because I care, but as far as this program is concerned, if they income qualify and they have a shut off notice, same as our rainy day, except at a higher income level. If you have a shut off notice and you qualify and there's funding, we'll help you.
So right now the rainy day doesn't go, the difference is the income level? Okay.
And the rainy day is managed by Ole Cap and St. Vincent de Paul.
Okay.
So they have to go and get outside funds. If
Okay.
we stand this program up in-house, we don't have to send them somewhere else.
Okay.
So it removes that stigma and hopefully we can reach more people that way.
Okay. So I didn't catch that it was largely the income level. Okay. Commissioners, other questions? Ken, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I do. So we will know in terms of the need that is there, the fact that they're facing a shutoff.
Yes.
All right, so
It's better to know, but us, right?
yeah, no, I'm strongly supportive of this. I think it was a very good catch to see that there was an opportunity to get funding. So kudos to you and your staff, and this is something that I think will help people who are desperately in need.
And it fits with the other things we're trying to do too, the energy efficiency loans and everything else. So another tool. So I don't know if other commissioners feel about this. I'm feeling like, do we want it brought back on consent agenda with the correct information? Would the other commissioners be okay with that next meeting?
Does Gene need any more direction from us about how the policy, like the $500? I mean, are we all good with the way that the limits have been set and the number of customers it could be? I mean, is there any more information or background needed from us on that kind of stuff with policy?
If you are good with the policy as written, no, I do not. I do not need further direction. And the resolution is correct. The only thing that was incorrect is the agenda report itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
I'd say correct the agenda report, get us the right one, put it in consent agenda. And if we have any questions next time, we can pull it. Otherwise, we'll make it happen, make it so. And then keep us posted like on everything else you do on how it's going. Okay. If there's no other action, we have reached the end of our meeting, and thank you everybody. And thank you for the Popsicle House inspiration, and we'll slide on out of here. Have a good night, everybody. And it is
Good
5:30.
night.
Thanks, commissioners.